I'm just going to read here a few of the relevant passages from the life of Themistocles from Plutarch. And the first concerns what we might think of as his education, because this is going to be very revealing for the greatness that he brings about in Athens, in which Thucydides is going to have so much praise for. And this is what Plutarch says. Themistocles was a slow and reluctant student of subjects which were moral in tone, or which were designed to promote a cultured sense of pleasure and delight. And he showed an unchildlike contempt for a merely theoretical approach to intelligence and practical activity, preferring instead to rely on his natural abilities. He was an admirer of Mnesiphilus of Phrygia, a man who was not an orator, but one of the so-called natural scientists. The Greek word there is the physiologoi, meaning what we would today think of as the pre-Socratics. But instead, Mnesiphilus cultivated what passed in those days for wisdom, that is, political ingenuity and practical intelligence, and he preserved it as if it were the teaching of a philosophical sect, passed down from one generation to another, from Solon onwards. Mnesiphilus's successors, who combined this teaching with forensic skills and diverted its application away from practical activities and towards oratory, were the so-called sophists. Okay, and so in the opening sentence there, what Plutarch is telling us is that Themistocles had contempt for a merely theoretical approach to intelligence and practical activity. The Greek word there for intelligence being synesis and practical activity being praxis. And the point is that Themistocles did not like to merely contemplate these things. He wanted to see them in action. And so he's drawn away from the natural scientists or the physiologoi and towards Mnesiphilus, because as it's said there of Mnesiphilus, his wisdom, and the Greek word used there is sophia, so his wisdom consisted in political ingenuity, and the Greek there is denotete politiken, and practical intelligence, where the Greek there is drastition sunesis. And for our purposes here, an understanding of the valence of those words in Greek is going to be definitive. So Mnesiphilus's wisdom consists, on the one hand, of political ingenuity, denotita politiken, and it's that adjective there, denotita, that's so extremely important. Its valence of meaning as an adjective ranges from terribleness to harshness to shrewdness to cleverness. And so we're in the realm of clever politics. And the problem with being clever is that it absolutely can be terrible, because simply being clever is not in and of itself a virtue, but it is a power of mind. And Aristotle in the Nicomachean Ethics is going to have a lot to say about this, precisely because it's very problematic. It is a powerful source of knowledge, but it's unyoked, or we could say it's not of necessity yoked to virtue as such. So being clever, and especially being politically clever, means that one can pull off things and accomplish things that are either good or evil. That's what makes its valence into the realm of terrible so interesting. And it's going to be Martin Heidegger much later who's going to place an enormous amount of emphasis on this word, and in particular as it arises in one of the choral odes in the Greek tragedy Antigone. But the point here for us is that this kind of politics is exactly what we would recognize today as Machiavellian politics, which is to say, not so much concerned with the truth as found or discovered through contemplation, but rather effectual truth that simply gets the job done, whether or not it's right or wrong. That's what Themistocles is drawn to. And as concerns the other component in Mnesiphilus's teaching, namely practical intelligence, the Greek there is drasterion sunesis, and the valence of that word drasterion ranges from vigorous to active to efficacious. And so when you think of the conjunction of these two things, which constitute the teaching of Mnesiphilus, you have vigorous, active, efficacious knowledge that is clever. And so you absolutely have all of the most powerful components of what we understand as Machiavellian politics, or in the language that we often hear today, realpolitik. And it's that which Themistocles is drawn to. And that's going to be the source and the motivation of the daring innovations that he's always persuading the Athenians to adopt, and most especially with regard to adopting the Techne for the navy of Menocles' triremes, but also that other line that was rather perplexing in the paragraph concerning the Greeks uniting together as subjects of the great powers. And with regard to that first innovation, the Techne of Menocles and the triremes, this is what Plutarch says.